political commentator Omry Makgoale joins us now for more on this. And Dr. Omry, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and for coming on tonight here on In Focus. The re-election of John Steenhuisen as leader of the Democratic Alliance, others are saying by a margin of close to 83%, but of course we are not being given clearly those numbers of those delegates that voted. It's been kept secret for some reason or the other, but nonetheless, the sense is that he got an overwhelming mandate that returned him into that position. Is this because he ran a good campaign and that really the party believes that he's the man to take the party over the threshold of 20%, or is it just simply that Dr. Mpho Phalatse had a very poor campaign? Good evening.
I think Mpho Phalatse maybe started her campaign very late in my mind, and she didn't have much chance because she started very late after she left being mayor of Johannesburg. So it was too late in my mind to start running the campaign. But besides that, I think the DA still has a problem of the race factor. As you might remember that most of the black leaders actually left the DA. So most of the black leaders are really not yet comfortable or trusted very well with leadership positions inside the DA in a proper manner, you know, and Mmusi Maimane left, Mashaba left, Lindiwe left, you know, and so most of the prominent black leaders have actually left because they've been uncomfortable. So I think that John Steenhuisen was supposed to win again because the DA has not yet transformed in terms of accepting the reality of South Africa, that the majority of the people in South Africa are actually black, you know. And so some of the people in the DA still have some prejudice against black leadership. And I think they still have a long way to go before they can really be a national party in the true sense.
DA itself would argue that that black leaders leave all parties all the time. Why do we like making this big fuss about black leaders leaving the Democratic Alliance? The ANC loses leaders all the time who are black. Action SA loses leaders who are black all the time. We don't go to town about that and make such a big deal as a reflection, I suppose, of a party that lacks transformation. They believe, of course, they are the most diverse party around today.
Yes, of course, they've got the right to think that way. But if you consider that South African society, about 75% is black, and you look at the leadership of the DA, you'll notice that the proportion doesn't correlate very well inside the DA. But I would say that, of course, one thing I have to commend the DA for, in the Western Cape, in the province, the Western Cape, they've done well for the white areas and the colored areas. And mostly the black areas are still suffering in the Western Cape, Kukuletu, Nyanga, Langa. And most of the black communities there are not very happy with the DA's performance there. But the whites and colors are satisfied in the Western Cape, you know. So I still think that they have a long way to go before they can actually convince the ordinary black person in the street of Langa that they are the party that they must vote for, they must trust with their future. You know?
So John Steenhuisen,
this is my view.
A John Steenhuisen-led Democratic Alliance, does it make for a credible opposition? Is he able to couch, for example, the messaging of the party to be able to appeal to the broader voter? If you listen to his 5-minute speech before he was voted in, and we'll come to what he said today, but yesterday he would have couched his messaging around some of the critical issues that the voter would be concerned about: energy, insecurity, crime, unemployment, cadre deployment, bureaucracy, and so on and so forth. Is he able to couch a good message that would be able to appeal to a broad mass of people that could possibly see the growth of the Democratic Alliance?
Yeah, I think his message was good later, maybe for what I would call the black middle class. You know, the black middle class, they would understand what he was saying. They would be concerned about this electricity in the manner in which he was talking about the services. But the ordinary black people who depend on SASSA for most of their livelihood and so on might not understand what he was saying, might not be on board for the DA. So I think they still have a long way to go. But in terms of the black middle class, they will catch some of the votes in the next year's elections. But I believe it's still not going to be enough for them to make a big impact, because they need to go into coalitions. And so far, the DA has not performed very well in terms of coalitions. They can't meet other parties halfway properly. They tend to appear to be arrogant to other parties, and that's why other parties, end up leaving the coalition with the DA. And so I think they need to learn. One of the things they should have discussed in their conference would have been how to handle coalitions. So that you have to get respect from the other person. You must also respect the other person. But once the other parties think that the DA is not handling them with respect, then they move out of the coalition. So I think the DA is not yet up to, in terms of handling the coalitions, how to handle other people who don't necessarily like you. How do you relate with other opposition parties that don't necessarily like you? So they have to learn that. And up to now, I think they have not yet learned that, in my mind.
So let's look at what he said today. I mean, he's literally set his priority now as he's re-elected to ensure that the coalition between the EFF and the ANC is not realized. He's calling it the ANC-EFF Doomsday Coalition, and he has declared EFF really enemy number one.
Yes, that of course, that's wishful thinking. In reality, as to whether that will happen, it's another matter. Next year, during the elections, I expect, of course, the ANC, my party, to go down a little bit. Maybe in KZN and Gauteng, maybe go down below 50. They will still, the ANC will still win the rural provinces. And then EFF would be there, maybe with maybe 10% vote. And likelihood, the ANC and the EFF will go into coalition, and the DA will still be outside, will still remain with the Western Cape. The way they are at the moment, I don't think they are ready to capture the other provinces, in my mind.
So you don't see the said opposition alternative formation with a pre-election moonshot pact as something that is going to work? I mean, basically all is borrowing from that, what do you call it, the phrase, the moonshot election. In other words, what we're going to see in next year's election is an act really of a quantum leap of the Democratic Alliance into governance of the national government in 2024. Do you see that happening?
Look, I don't think, the way the DA is at the moment, I don't think they will do that, for the simple reason, not that the proportions, the ratios, the numbers would be okay for them to do that, but because they don't know how to relate with other parties. They don't have good relationship with other parties, whether it's Action SA, whether it's Freedom Front Plus, whether it's the one of McKenzie. The DA doesn't know how to relate with these other parties, and because it doesn't relate very well with these other parties, it's unlikely to form a coalition that would remove the ANC. Because for it to remove the ANC, they need to work with these other parties. Action SA, McKenzie Party, Freedom Front Plus, and other political parties, except ANC and EFF. So, and at the moment, they've not been handling the coalitions very well. They've performed poorly according to my standards. In coalitions, they've performed poorly. And that's why the relationship with Mashaba was, gone out, and the relationship with Katie McKenzie gone out. Relationship with Freedom Front Plus is not so good. So they are not performing well in terms of the coalitions. And for them to win a national office, they need these coalition forces. And at the moment, they are not performing well in that. They can't negotiate well. Very poor negotiators. And that's why they don't make it in coalitions properly. Yeah. That's my assessment.
Here's a little bit of a more, I suppose, personal question would be, because of your own party, which is the African National Congress, would a DA led by Steenhuisen be relevant in opposition politics at all if it wasn't for the hopelessness of the African National Congress at local municipalities, the mess that they are making there at province, and maybe one could even argue in some of the national departments, particularly if you look at state-owned entities?
Yes, I'm struggling to hear you very well, Thabo. I don't know what's
I'm saying, would a DA led by John Steenhuisen be relevant if it were not for the hopelessness of the African National Congress and how, for example, it's running municipalities? If you look at the mess in Mangaung and maybe by and large the Northwest, if you look at what's happening at state-owned entities at a national level.
You're right. I think it would not have been relevant. You know, the ANC is extremely corrupt at the moment. And, it's got corrupt leaders on top there. And, in the NEC, there are these people who were mentioned in the Zondo Commission's report. Some were involved in the VPS bank heist. And some were involved in the PPS scandals. Some were involved in life asset demanding. So we've got all these colorful people in the NEC of ANC with all these scandals. And they are there. And so basically, DA becomes relevant because ANC is extremely corrupt and it has not managed to clean itself. If it had managed to clean itself, at least implement Zondo Commission's report, follow commission of inquiry into Eskom after Andre Tirade said 1 billion a month has been siphoned off from Eskom by NC officials, cartels and ministers. If they were doing something about it, then it would be better. DA would not be relevant. But DA becomes relevant because ANC is extremely corrupt and is led by extremely corrupt leaders. So it's a very shameful situation, and that's why the DA is relevant. It would not be relevant if the ANC was ethical and clean, and if the ANC was making efforts to clean itself. But at the moment, I doubt they are not doing enough.
Omry Makgoale, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Political commentator there. Omry Makgoale is joining us to give us his analysis of the outcomes of the DA's